I'm Dimitri Durieux from CETIC. I replace Jean-Christophe Depré. Sorry, he's apologized. And so CETIC is a Belgian research science dedicated to IT. Mainly, we work with industry and academic worlds to build research projects. And so it is the focus of this presentation is to show you how we use research project results and build a link to the industry world that you represent as OW2 ecosystem. So we developed the Choose platform. Choose platform is a tool to assess the maturity of OW2, in fact, project. So first of all, Choose is an application of a QualOSS methodology. And QualOSS methodology is a tool, a framework that I will speak about after, to evaluate open source software. And we use this methodology to evaluate OW2 project according to the Mature Transition Checklist that was in 2012. So, 2 years. The idea was to make an automation of the analysis and reporting aspect according to the Mature Transition Checklist proposed by OW2 to ensure that it's like a certification, in fact. It's a trust add to project to ensure that, yeah, we're evaluating the maturity of our project. It's a kind of certification. So we have some problems because we focus only on Java projects. And we choose a workflow-oriented approach, use Bonita soft, in fact. Bonita open software was version 5.3 at this time, about. And so why we use this tool? Because, first of all, it's OW2 project, but it's so cool. And second, this tool is quite flexible. It's enabled to add more tasks, add more conditions of each task. It's quite very interesting for analysis process. So I remember of the maturity transition checklist. Mature transition checklist is decomposed in three main parts. First of all, a technical aspect is more answer to location question. Where is stored, where is saved the source code, where is saved the documentation, binaries, and so on. Build maturity, your project is built, or where is the documentation of the build process, and so on. And you have a source code repository and management question to answer. And a second aspect was SQAT. SQAT was and is, in fact, an initiative to ensure two sides. First of all, quality of open source software produced in the OW2 ecosystem, and trustworthiness. Why trustworthiness? Mainly the IP of the software produced, and some legal aspect relative of that. And the third, the community. Community, open source software community. So what's committers activity, dashboard completeness. Mainly each OW2 project have a web page, and so the completeness of the web page must be evaluated in this case. Project activity, so you know what I mean. So what we proposed is to not focus on the IP aspect because some tool provide it quite good, but is to propose that to evaluate the maturity of a software using a methodology, the QualOSS methodology. In fact, we use QualOSS, I will explain after, to evaluate the maturity of three aspects: reliability, maintainability, and community aspect of the software. So you will see we have two community aspects, but QualOSS is very quite more completeness. So what is QualOSS? QualOSS is an assessment methodology. In fact, you can see as a framework to construct assessment model according to specific goal. For example, if you are an industrial and you want to integrate an open source component, you will, in this case of this project, that's what the goal, you want to know if this project is as mature as I need, and you want to be able to benchmark project to choose the best one, according your business, according your constraint. And so QualOSS proposes generic approach to construct this assessment model, but also specific ones, and this is the case of OW2, is to add on this generic assessment model specific assessment constraint decided by OW2 Mature Transition Checklist. Alors, so this is some example of scenario, benchmarking of open source for integration of all services, in fact. Deciding the migration frequency if you want, and deciding the setup of new endeavor to increase chance of success. And the last one was the case of OW2 to assess the maturity of the open source sphere and open source software. So as you can see, we spoke about project, but in fact it's more greater than that. It covers more aspects, it covers endeavor. Endeavor is more larger, it can be a project, a set of projects, an application, a set of application, a component, a set of application. It's quite generic, in fact. So QualOSS assessment method cover a large aspect of open source software. As you can see, you can have work project aspect, community member aspect, software process aspect, and tool and dependencies. In the case of the QualOSS assessment method, we have done it during a research project done by FP7, European project. And so, as you can see, gray square was not covered at the end of the project. The rest, yes, the rest is composed, so the project, the community member, and software process. Software process is evaluated according to a set of questions. It's difficult to evaluate it with OW2. It's very, very still hundreds of questions. It's quite not automatizable. So community members' work project is more automatizable, and we have developed some script to evaluate community members, maintainability, and reliability of software. And in the case of the OW2 assessment, we done just these three evaluations. These three indicators, in fact. In these three characteristics, you have 35 indicators covering releases, in fact, source code, mailing list, commits log, and bugs list. As you can see, first of all, source code is quite easy. And the second mailing list, commit log, and bug list, it's to cover maintainability aspect and community aspect. It's quite very important to evaluate the maturity of a team, in fact, and not really the source code. This can be evolved over time. Another aspect is evolution-based indicators. In fact, most of tools focus on a snapshot of the application. For samples on Cube, you run a snapshot, and so you have a report, but you cannot have indicators about the evolution of these indicators. You can have some delta, but you don't have, oh yes, this delta is too much or too lesser according to these indicators. And so you cannot evaluate, oh yes, it's good, or yes, it's bad. And so you cannot objective the measure. Finally, you cannot evaluate the maturity of the evolutionary aspect of the software. But in fact, if you want to evaluate the maturity of a software, you must take into account if the software is falling or not. If the software community is falling, it's not quite mature, but maybe there are a problem. And so we use evolution-based indicators, compute on multiple major and minor release. In fact, we select 2 major releases. It's quite easy. And between them, we select 3 or 2, depending on the availability of the release, minor release. It's quite important because minor release have lesser, is more a maintainability of the major release, and the major release bring more functionality and some other bugs. And so it's interesting to evaluate the bug tracker according to major release, not quite to minor release. Another aspect is the scoring system. So once you have characteristic, you must evaluate the value, the risk on this characteristic. For example, the risk on the missing of maturity of the project. So we calibrate these 35 indicators according to 400 SourceForge projects. So it's quite important to you have a kind of benchmarking according to this project. In fact, when I saw, yes, your score is 1, 2, or 3, you are being benchmarked according to this project. And so we done some calibration specific to the MTC because some constraint on the committer, the number of committers, if I remember, was specific to the MTC and not clearly to QualOSS. This is a sample of report that we produce for reliability and for Chameleon. Why Chameleon? Because it was a project in version 0.2.0 or 0.3. It's 22? Ah, sorry. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, you have indicators, average number of bugs in stable release, and so on. You have slope number of bugs in stable release, that's evolutionary indicator, and you have a rating, it's a score, and the color symbolizes the risk on these indicators. For example, the average percentage of modified fine between minor release is quite risky, in fact. And you have a global score to say, oh yes, your reliability is quite risky. But in this case, if you want to know more, you can show that 2.5 it's small risk, and so 2.2 it's good. So this is the other side. You can generate the Mature Transition Checklist report. This is a sample of the box according to the SQAT proposal. We just completed with the QualOSS assessment methodology and QualOSS scoring, community, maintainability, and reliability. So in conclusion, we support 35 indicators, and we validate this approach on a set 4 or 5 OW2 projects from the beginning to the end. And just the information gathering process has been validated on the whole larger set of OW2 projects. The important thing is the resource gathering is automatized. We gather resource from OW2 website. It's very good. It was difficult without any access to the DB. And so we generate the report at the same of the W2 MTC according to the QualOSS specificities. Furthermore, we want to continue the QualOSS characteristic automation. So a lot of this is not automatized. Improve technology coverage, not only Java or Python, and increase the number of indicators. 35 is good, but we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much.